Hi guys, Rich from Truckspark here again with another short tutorial for you. Hope everybody's well and had a really great and spooky Halloween, and you're looking forward to Bonfire Night. That's if you're in the UK. If you're in the US or anywhere else, then I guess you don't have Bonfire Night. But yeah. Anyway, I'll stop rambling and get on with the tutorial this month. It's on layering your kick drum. I think I've done stuff about layering in the past, but I think the emphasis on today's layering of the kick drum is slightly different. So, and I guess you'll see why in a minute. But that's not to say you have to layer your kick drum. This is just something that I've been working on in a recent tune, and it worked for me in this tune. I've also worked on a tune just as recent as this, and the kick drum was just one perfect sample, and it worked brilliantly. And I didn't need to do anything to it. I didn't need to split it up, layer it, hardly even EQ it. So, you know, that's not to say this is how you should do things. This is just another way of doing something if you might need to. And there's a couple of little tips and tricks for you, hopefully. Anyway, the first thing I do when I should say really that when you're doing sort of dance music or electronic music, whether it's pop or pop music or electronic pop music or dance music, then I guess the kick drum is arguably one of the most important elements to your mix and your track. So if you've not got that right, then your track's gonna sort of suffer the consequence for it. Or it's one of those things that some people spend 2 hours on. I don't spend 2 hours on a kick drum, but it's one of those things that can instantly make your tune sound better if you spend a little bit of time getting it right or getting it better. Then that's going to improve your tune. It's like a basic thing from the ground up. Yeah, as good as your tune might be, if you improve your kick drum in your dance tune, then your dance tune is going to be better. So yeah, here we go. Anyway, so one of the things I do is, if I'm working to a brief, I'll have reference tunes, and I will try and get a similar sounding kick drum to that reference tune, or I'll make it sort of make sure that it sounds the same in my mix as it does in the reference tune mix, so that it's balanced the same, I guess, so that it's punching through the same, so that the top end's got as much click to it, or the low mids have got as much punch to them, etc., etc., and it's the same sort of volume compared to the rest of the track. So that's a good way of working out whether it's good, whether you've got a decent kick drum in your mix. Use a reference tune to compare it to, or and I have 2 or 3 before I start a lot of the time. Or if I'm not, and I'm just writing a tune that's not to a specific brief, obviously pick the right sort of sounding kick drum for your track, and then at the end find a tune that has a similar vibe to it or a similar sound, and then compare it to your kick drum. Make sure your kick drum sounds as good as the one in your reference tune. So that's one thing that I do. But going back to layering your kick drum, now you might not find the perfect sounding kick drum, so you might want to pick different elements from different kick drums to give you a better sound. And when you do that, you're going to want to EQ your EQ, or put a filter, high pass, low pass filter on those elements, so that the frequencies aren't crossing over and becoming a horrible mishmash of sound. But before I quickly show you that, I'll just play you the tune quickly so you can hear what's going on, and then I'll show you what I've done. Okay. there we go, sort of like a poppy type Afrobeat style dance tune. And I think the kick drum doesn't sound too bad. It needs a bit of work, but right. So I'll show you what I've got going on. Now I'm using battery for this. You don't have to use battery. I'm just using it. You could have kick drums lined up on audio channels, or a different sampler, that's triggered, that you're triggering through MIDI. So what I've got is these two here are my kick drums. Now I've got a third element here called my kick sub, so I'm just going to mute that. These two are coming out of this channel here, this group channel, which I've named kick. So element number one is this sort of clicky sound, and I have got a high pass filter on it all the way up to sort of 2 kilohertz. So if I took that off, you could hear, oh, it's distorting there, that's why it sounds rubbish. But there we go. So it's just the clicky part that I was after. And then this is my other one, and this is quite punchy. So I wanted that really low, mid, high, lows sort of punchy bit from this particular kick drum. If I took the filter off, it's got quite a nice click on it anyway. So it's not a bad sounding kick anyway, but I'll show you why. I'll tell you why I split it up anyway. But I've just got those sort of low mid frequencies. I've got a filter all the way down to 2, and then I've got a high pass filter all the way up to sort of 50, almost 51 hertz. And then my third element is this kick sub, and it's basically just a group channel or an effects channel. And what I've got on it, if I just open the control panel here, is I think I did a tutorial on just this quite a long while ago, but so you might have seen this before. It is a test generator. So and then I've got a gate on it set to a side chain. If I was just to take this off, then my test generator is just making a sine wave at sine wave tone at 55 hertz. So let's just stick that back on. So it's side chained, and then I've got this EQ here. There's not a lot happening above this frequency anyway, but I've just put the shelf on it just for the heck of it. But anyway, my kick channel, so my other two elements I'm sending them to my kick sub channel, so my side chain. So this kick is triggering this, is opening the gate and giving me a kick, like a sub element to it. So if I just solo my kick, and then I'll add in my kick sub, and you can hear it's triggering the sub. So I've got 3 elements. I've got my low end, and I've got my punchy bit, and then I've got my click. And the reason I wanted that was that a good reason for using this is you've got those 3 separate elements that you can now control in your mix individually or separately. So if you needed more punch, I can turn up my punchy bit, or if I needed more click, I can turn up my click, or if I need more sub, then I can turn up my sub, all independently of one another. So that's a really useful way of doing it. And I like, some kicks have really nice bottom end anyway, but I've got a synth sub in this tune as well. And to get the two to work together, so to get my kick sub and my actual sub to work together, I like to use the test generator because I can change the frequency. So my actual sub synth bass sound, yeah, the sweet spot for the frequencies is around sort of 50, 45 to 50. And if I had my sub at 45, for instance, they're just gonna mishmash and cross over. Even though the sub is side chained to my kick, as well, with a compressor, but they're still just going to mishmash, and you're not going to hear the sub end of my kick drum. So I can change the frequency to sit just above or below, if that was the case, the actual bass itself, or the, like I say, my sub in this case. So I've got it at 55. I've got the actual test generator set at 55, and then I've got a really sort of steep high pass set to 50, so that there's the frequencies are clearer below that, and there's just room for my actual sub bass sound, and my kick sub is sitting just on top of that, and they're working a little bit better together, and then as well as the other parts to my kick. So that's the reason for that. Let's just listen to do we need to listen to it? Let's just listen to the beats. Yeah, so there you go. You can hear, like I say, I can control those three elements individually. And there was one other thing I was going to say. Oh, it's obviously, again, massively about sort of balance. So I've always struggled at getting my kick drum right, or balancing my kick drum. And I have to really concentrate and make myself turn it. A lot of the time I start with my kick drum and then build my beats around that, and then build the track from there. Don't do it every time, but a lot of the time I do. And I used to sort of start and think, right, okay, my kick drum sounds good, and it'd be the fader, it'd be sort of, you know, between -5 and 0, and my kick drum was again making that sort of at that sort of level, and then eventually everything, I put all the other elements in, and then the kick drum would be lost in the mix. Not completely lost, but just not as punchy. So I have to make myself turn everything down to like 10, -10 or more, or -15. And then I've got a lot more room to play with, as inevitably you're going to keep turning things up as you go along in the mix. Well, I do anyway. So the lower I start, you know, I'm not talking about -50, but I sort of make myself turn things down to sort of -15, -10, -15, and then I'll put all my snare and my hats in and everything else, and I think, right, okay, well, that kick drum needs to come through more now, and I've got loads more room to turn it up. And then obviously I used parallel compression a lot of the time in electronic music. So turn everything. I have to. I know I said I'd turn it down, and it's at 0 at the moment, but I promise you, it did start around here, and I've ended up turning it up to sort of almost 0. But you know, and that made, and you know, as well as all these 3 separating elements, etc., etc., if your kick drum's not loud enough, then it's still not going to punch through either way. So you know, make sure everything else is quieter than your kick drum, I guess. Right, so there we go. I hope that was okay for you guys. I hope that was quite useful. A couple of little tips and tricks in there, and maybe just reinforcing a couple of the obvious things as well. But nice one. Have a great bonfire night, and I will speak to you next month. Cheers, guys.